Viewers, now animal rights activist Ambika Shukla is also joining us on the Supreme Court's observation. Your first remarks, Ms. Shukla.
Well, the Supreme Court has upheld the ABC rules 2023, so that puts an end to all the controversy over that. A lot of people were trying to bring that up and challenging the very basis of the orders. But now that the Supreme Court has upheld them, that is finalized the ABC rules. Now, the next thing is the implementation of the ABC rules. While the Supreme Court has identified that there has been an institutional failure, it is, a pity that they have not punished who they have identified for the problem. Instead, the dogs are being punished. I don't see the point in parallelly running an ABC program and parallelly jailing dogs, harmless, healthy, friendly dogs. Because all dogs who live in institutions are actually friendly because they know the place, they know the residents, and those are not causing any problems. Schools have had dogs for years and years. Children are friends with them. In sports stadia, athletes regularly feed and play with the dogs when they come in and out. So I think this is a completely misreading of the situation of where the problem is. It is not with institutional areas because dogs that have lived there are known to everybody. They are familiar and they belong where they have been born. So I think this part of the order is certainly problematic. It doesn't address a problem, it doesn't solve a problem, it causes a lot of unnecessary cruelty to dogs who've never caused any harm. So this part of the order, I think, definitely needs to be relooked at, and it is a pity that the Supreme Court has not bothered to look at the actual evidence. We have shown evidence of where the Jawaharlal Nehru Stadium...
But the Supreme Court is now observing that it doesn't want to be bothered anymore with these pleas, and it is, of course, asked those filing these petitions to approach the High Court. The Supreme Court stands by its previous verdicts and observation. As I said, it is concerning, it is unfathomable that several cases of dog bites are being reported from even airports, from outside schools, even tourists are being bitten by stray dogs.
Ma'am, that is not correct. There's an occasional incident.
That is what the Supreme Court has said.
That is what I'm saying. They have not actually looked at the proportions. They have not looked at the perspective. They've not taken it into perspective. You have traffic accidents every day where 10 lakh people a year lose their lives in India. We have rabies cases of just 54 in the whole country. So if you look at the perspective, dogs are not a huge issue. So the Supreme Court has actually created a controversy where there was none. Dogs have lived in India peacefully and peaceably for years and years. There has never been a huge issue about it. Every colony has dogs. People feed them, people sterilize them, people vaccinate them, and people live with them and they love them, and the dogs protect the areas. They keep the areas clean of garbage. They keep the areas clean of rats. They keep the areas clean of monkeys. But without those dogs, you have areas that are completely vulnerable. So dogs play an extremely important ecological role. In the absence of familiar friendly dogs, you will find that unknown dogs moving. This is what happened at Jawaharlal Nehru Stadium. They removed the familiar dogs from the stadium for the first time in 40 years. In 40 years, there had been no bites. 40 years later, they removed the dogs once for a program. A new dog moved in. A new dog bit somebody. And that dog has never been found or identified because the description of the dog was not any of the dogs that were caught by the municipalities. So you're looking at the wrong problem, you're dealing it in the wrong way. We have asked several times that give the ABC program to animal welfare experts and let them do it, not municipalities.
Are you now expecting to approach the High Courts to challenge?
That is what the Supreme Court has washed its hands of the issue after creating a lot of confusion. The Supreme Court seems to have washed its hands of the issue and now directed the High Courts. Last time they had said everything from High Court should come to the Supreme Court. This time they have said everything from the Supreme Court should go to High Court. So there seems to be a lot of confusion. The Supreme Court has itself 3 times changed its order one way, then another way, then a third way. So
all right, but finally it's saying that it can't be bothered anymore because it's already given its observation, has heard the matter time and again. So this time it's for the petitioners to approach the High Court. Would you do that?
Yeah, we will, but we expect a fair hearing. The thing about the Supreme Court verdict is that, even during the hearings, they gave a minute each to each lawyer. I mean, in 1 minute, what can a lawyer present? And they were extremely dismissive, and they were not listening. There was a lot of commentaries from the judges' side without application of mind. They had already seemed to have predetermined their minds, prejudged the issue. They did not really apply their minds on the basis of evidence. They had already made up their minds and they didn't care if facts got in the way. So this is not based on factual evidence. It is not based on science. It is not based on any kind of actual application of mind. And I would say that this is not an order that will ever go down well in either in history or to on ground. I don't see how it can be implemented. The kind of monies we're looking at is 55,000 crores to build shelters for institutional dogs. Is India willing to spend 55,000 crores annually on jailing dogs? It seems a ridiculous proposition in a country that is poor, a country that is beset with problems given the current prevailing world global situation and all the problems being faced. Our dogs are our main issue. At this time, it would have been good for the Supreme Court to have taken a step back, re-evaluated the problem, re-looked at it, modified its order in light of the current situation, in light of all the evidence that was presented to them of how the ABC program settles the problem. Within 2 years, the problem will be settled. There was no need for this kind of an order that was itself called, that this same bench called harsh, they have reverted to it. So it doesn't make any logical sense. That is what is disappointing. When we talk about the Supreme Court, we expect the highest application of mind, the highest level of seriousness, the highest level of science, and the highest level of public good being considered. Here I don't see much of that happening except for the upholding of the ABC rules and finalizing them. So that is the only positive part of this order. And we will see what happens now. Because as all state governments have found it extremely difficult to implement the order as it is, the kind of monies it requires, the kind of staff it requires, the kind of training it requires, the kind of land it requires, it is actually an impractical and undoable order. Now high courts will have to grapple with the same thing. So you will have this, unending cycle carrying on. Nothing has been resolved till things are up in the air.
All right, Ambika Shukla, thank you so much for joining us on the telecast. I also have with me my colleague Sambhav Sharma on the telecast with me. Sambhav, in terms of this judgment, what exactly are when we talk about the implementation or the lessons that are being learned, if you could shed more light on the judgment as well?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the Supreme Court has, in a way, directed that all the high courts are directed to register suo motu continuous mandamus cases to monitor implementation of the Supreme Court directions on stray animals, and also the top court has warned that continuous failure by officials may invite proceedings under applicable law and contempt action to be initiated against officers deliberately disregarding Supreme Court orders. And the Chief Secretary of the State and Union Territories are directed to file their compliance, report before the Jurisdictional High Court. Now, earlier, this report was sought by the top court on second, and asked for come to the Supreme Court. They were summoned to the Supreme Court, all the Chief Secretaries of different states, and this time they'll have compliance reports before the Jurisdictional High Court by August 7, and Union government also directed to comply with that. And also the consolidated reports, compliance reports from the High Court to be placed before the top court, the Supreme Court of India, on November 17. And the Supreme Court has said that matter will remain closed except for receiving compliance reports. Now these compliance reports are going to be important because these compliance reports will show as to what exactly is the ground situation, what exactly is the infrastructural update at the ground level, and what different states in their compliance reports will flag as to what are going to be the concerns at ground zero. But laxity will not be tolerated is what the Supreme Court has made it clear, very clear this time, and has directed the states states to strengthen and effectively implement the Animal Welfare Board of India framework rules and order that establishment of at least one fully functional animal birth control center in every district. Again, this is an important point. The court has ordered establishment of at least one fully functional animal birth control center in every state, and as states were told to expand these animal ABC centers further depending on the population density and local requirements. And here the states are directed to ensure adequate availability of these anti-rabies medicines and vaccines. On the other hand, another very important issue, National Highway Authority of India, NHAI, has been directed this time to address the issue of stray cattle. Because earlier, when the hearing was going on in the Supreme Court, this matter was raised up, was raised in the Supreme Court by one of the lawyers, and here the NHAI this time Supreme Court is directed, keeping that concern in mind, the NHAI is directed to address the issue of the stray cattle on national highways, including deployment of decommissioned and depreciated transport vehicles for handling the stray cattle in the time-bound manner. So here, in a way, these directions of the Supreme Court are not just directions, but practical solutions as to how this problem will be tackled at ground zero. It's not just the flagging of the problem, but also how it is to be resolved at ground zero. And this again, NHAI also directed to establish a monitoring and coordination framework on this issue. And the Supreme Court judgment has said the authorities may take legally permissible measures, including euthanasia for rabies and dangerous dogs to curb the human life. Again, a very important point raised by the Supreme Court here, that authorities are given legally permissible measures for euthanasia or for the dangerous dogs to curb the threats to human life. And on the other hand, again, a measure which will be implemented at ground zero. Here the Supreme Court has directed the officials of municipal authorities and the state agencies.
All right, Sambhav, stay on with me.